Hola, Mina-san! Welcome back for another round of Warhammer research. We are now jumping into the next race, the Leagues of Votann. The Votann is supposed to be the space dwarves, from what I understand. And we're going to be finding out about them from good old-fashioned KrakDuk. KrakDuk channel. Find links down in the description below. I'm very curious. It's supposed to be the most recently created race by Games Workshop, and so this should be a little bit more faster research into them. Probably not that much in terms of lore and everything, which is okay. They're starting new, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle a new race, especially with the way with the way that the a lot of the rules have changed since third edition, and how they were able to fit in a freshly newly made set of groups. Leagues of Votann. I don't like them, or do I? Warhammer 40k lore, and that's well. I don't know what more I could say because I know nothing of the Votann. None of the videos in the Draw My Research ever spoke of anything about the Votann that I'm aware of when I was first learning about them. So this is going to be a pretty interesting blind go. Let me know down in the comment below about the Votann, because I'm most likely going to end up being lost. I have a feeling that's going to end up happening. All right. So, make sure to get your notes together for my post-research thoughts. This is called to action. Comment, like, subscribe, follow, hit the notification button, and let us begin the research.
Hi friends, today I'm going to the center of the galaxy because I'm on a quest. A quest to find out why people like the Leagues of Votann. Is there something interesting that I'm missing? Am I just stupid and don't see the appeal? Or do people literally just like them because of Deep Rock Galactic? I guess I'll see in the Galactic Core. Well, that was unpleasant, but now I know more about the Leagues of Votann, so let's get into it in this short video. And just off rip, I admit I judged the kin a bit too harshly. I still think that their aesthetic is a bit lacking, and there's too many overlaps with the Tau, and that they feel a bit out of place in 40k at the moment, but they're actually very interesting. They're literally just space miners. That's it. Every single aspect of
like
their
the sound of
culture
that.
revolved around the simple fact that they were sent to space to mine. And gosh darn it, do they mine. First they mine, and then they craft. Spacecraft, that is.
Now I understand the Deep
the Leagues of
Deep Rock
Votann
Galactic.
are a huge empire located in the dangerous galactic core. They're smaller than the Imperium, but much bigger and more established than the Eldar Tau. They were quite insular, only rarely venturing out of the core, and they generally keep their true population a secret. For a while, most leagues stayed in the core, mostly fighting orcs, chaos, and the occasional Imperial explorers. Only small holds of kin would go out either to trade or for adventures. However, with the opening of the Galactic Rift, Votann society was shaken, introducing more enemies, displacing leagues, and forcing some to create holds outside of the core, finally allowing them to properly come into contact with the other factions and get that sweet, sweet tabletop representation.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good approach to introducing them. So they've always been there. They're very small area. So basically, they're just a small little area. They were just minding their own business, doing their little thing, and then everybody decided, hey, let's see what's going on over here and screw around with them. And the space sorts are like, we were just minding our own business and leaving you all alone. Why are you messing with us? Why are you doing that? I'm beginning to like these guys already. I'm liking the story approach to this.
The Leagues of Votann were originally Dark Age of Technology humans sent into the treacherous galactic core to mine its vast resources. And to help with the treacherous expedition, they were sent with extremely advanced AIs called Votann Ancestor Cores. These Ancestor Cores were basically sentient supercomputers that guided the Voidfarers, offering wisdom, guidance, and whatever other important stuff they needed. Every single aspect of their current culture stemmed from their origins as Voidfarers. The Votann are mostly defined by their practicality, extreme utilitarianism, highly conservative attitude towards resources, greed and hoarding of resources, and of course, their wholesome family values. All of these are just the natural endpoint of a void-faring society. In space, especially a dangerous uncharted area like the galactic core, the travelers must act practically and efficiently, otherwise they would perish to the cruel conditions of the void. Risk and reward assessments were invaluable, as a waste of resources could mean death in the endless unknown. So, being conservative with the finite resources was essential, and beyond
Makes sense.
that, it was crucial that the Voyagers gathered any and all resources they came across and stockpiled as much as squat humanly possible. And finally, their
Hoarders.
cute little wholesome family values made a ton of sense, as the Voidfarers would naturally form close-knit communities and had to look after one another to get through their perilous journey together. It's like the Oregon Trail, except instead of some measly 2,000 miles to the other side of the country,
2
it's a
million.
galactic journey to the rumor of riches, and instead of dying to dysentery, you could get annihilated by this asteroid, or perhaps this one, or maybe eaten by a black hole, or crushed by a funny guy called Gravity. And at least
Instead
on
of
the
dying
Oregon
to
Trail, if
dysentery,
didn't
you
find
died to
gold
this
or open a
asteroid.
successful brothel, you would get the beautiful scenery of the Pacific as you died of hunger. In the galactic core, you'd more likely just perish in the empty void.
Damn.
But with that in mind, the humans who went to the galactic core were guided by the Votann into being shorter, stouter, and more teacup-esque. And by guided by the Votann, I don't mean the kin super googled how to short max and watch some crappy YouTube videos on stoicism. I mean the Votann cores literally guided the Votann's evolution into the form they are now. Votann are
Oh.
responsible for the kin's reproduction through the use of cloning machines called crucibles. That's right, the kin are so utilitarian and efficient that they took the most fun part out of reproduction. But
That is wrong. Oh man. So that's what. So they came from the dark age of humanity, and they evolved into stout, short dwarves. Wow. Wow, they went there. All because of the ancestor core. That's pretty messed up, man. That the ancestor core did that. But then again, I'm kind of curious if the location that they're in, within that void, has some type of, since it's all chaotic and everything, would have, like their bodies had to be adjusted like that in order to handle the severity of that area of space, or else they would have face ultimate annihilation and become extinct. I wonder if that's the reason behind that. That would make a lot of sense.
anyways, every kin's genome is added to the Votann's genomic banks, and the Votann cores use complex algorithms to mix and match various kin's genes into new beings. So, through a series of controlled mutations called clone skeins, these made the kin more optimized for ship life and mining in wild space, as they had stronger bones, denser muscles, greater strength, and were overall more resilient physically and spiritually. The spiritual aspect is a bit harder to pin than big muscle, harder bone. But it's probably that the Votann alter the kin's brain chemistry into naturally being more tenacious and bold, as well as cultivating a culture of resilience. But beyond tangible changes, the Votann did manage to make the kin's souls more dim than humans. This protects them from chaos taint and makes them harder for chaos to even find. Clone skins can also come in the form of cool little abilities suited for certain jobs like rock skin or IR vision. Also, them being a clone race explicitly does not mean that they are identical. In fact, I think the whole reason they're clones is to avoid the issues of a lack of genetic diversity. I don't know if it was outright stated anywhere in lore, but to me, it makes a ton of sense for them to be a clone race, since in any limited population, inbreeding is inevitable if they last long enough. So, having all the crewmates' genomes uploaded to the Votann so it
Sorry, what did that say here? Although the first fleet seemingly weren't meant to stay in the core, so that does add a complication to this theory. However, it is possible that these ships were meant to go into the core for a few generations, then return with a ton of resources. And somehow they must have found a way to not only survive but thrive in there for generations. That would make a lot of sense.
So, having all the crewmates' genomes uploaded to the Votann so it could pick favorable traits and make genetically unique offspring would ensure the king could theoretically go on forever without losing genetic diversity. With this in mind, it would make sense that they would only reproduce via cloning from the start, And further, it would make sense to create a culture of never reproducing organically in order to further safeguard from incest. After all, without traditional offspring, it would be hard for the kin to know if they share genetic traits with other kin, and it could lead to accidental homozygosity. But anyways, speaking of culture, let's go into that a bit more. First is their simple truths. They fully acknowledge and have come to terms with the fact that they don't know the full extent of their history. But they do have a set of simple truths that define their history and culture. These often come in the form of battle cries or kin sayings. It also keeps their culture alive while being succinct ways of conveying complex ideas. I also mentioned earlier how they're incredibly
highly
philosophical to their origins, and of course this is 40k, so they take it to the extreme. The Leagues will harvest entire planets, clean of their resources, collapsing local ecosystems, and leaving exploited husks. Also,
they're like the
Tyranids thing. Coolest shit ever.
Wait a sec. There is so much text going on here. I gotta say, the void is in our veins. We as a society and people have been radically influenced by our history in the void. We are so tied to the void. It is analogous to the blood that runs through our veins, among other things. And what happened here? Sorry.
Clean of their resources, collapsing local ecosystems, and leaving exploited husks. Also, just look at this insane thing. Coolest shit ever.
They like to destroy planets so they can mine easier from the planet's debris. They also usually give warning to the inhabitants before annihilating the world, just like Galactus. How nice! Wow, yo, this the Votann is pretty crazy. I know I'm jumping back and forth, but he's putting up a lot of amazing lore text on here, and you know, I'm trying to decide if I wanted to stop and read or because I don't want to stop too much, but it's just vital pieces of information here. I'm really liking this group, man. Orcs is still the best, though. I wonder how the orcs think of the Votann. They like to destroy planets. So basically, he likened them to the Tau. I likened them to the Tyranids. If they're wiping out an entire world and chasing out the inhabitants of a planet so they could siphon up for resources, that's the Tyranids, hands down.
They will also hoard their vast stocks of resources and ferociously defend them as long as the risk outweighs the reward. They are so materially conservative that they even conserve their use of words. They often assign multiple meanings or deep nuances to words so that they don't waste words or time speaking. And expanding on this, their risk-reward utilitarian mindset is so pervasive that they'll simply abandon objectives or battles they deem a waste of resources. Khals and Thanes, the kin leaders, are responsible for assessing the enemy and determining the optimal use of resources to complete objectives, or when to abandon them. This does not, however, mean that they will abandon their kin willy-nilly. To them, family and the lives of their fellow kin is often the most valuable resource, so they will fight hard to protect each other. But an extremely notable exception to this is their iconic grudges. Whenever an enemy wrongs or insults the kin enough, they form an everlasting grudge. These grudges, the kin almost completely abandon all reason and practicality in order to absolutely destroy their transgressors. In doing so, they will seemingly grow blind to their core culture and expend an insane amount of resources and lives if it means destroying their most hated foe. Basically, they get Imperium pilled for a little while if they see someone that they really, really don't like.
No, worse. The Minbari. They go full Minbari on them. They'll make sure that the whole entire race doesn't exist anymore, including the homeworld planet. If you don't know who I'm talking about, watch Babylon 5.
While this may seem counter to everything in the Leagues of Votann society, mostly because it is, for whatever reason, it is deeply ingrained in their culture.
I love grudges.
My theory for the evolution of grudges is that for the early Voyagers, it was important to completely eradicate the most threatening enemies so that they could not come back to destroy the kin later on. But another thing that seems a bit counter to Votann culture is how bold and adventurous they generally are. Since they're so stingy with their resources, you'd think they'd be very cautious and afraid to take risks, but this is actually quite the opposite. Kin culture encourages people to live life to the fullest and go on adventures to learn and discover new prospects in order to honor the Votann. Thus, you get a lot of daring adventurers and warriors within the kin ranks. And even this makes sense with their cultural origins. On the surface, this may seem a bit disjointed, but in reality for the Voidfarers, they would of course be adventurous and encouraged to find new things since they were prospectors first and foremost. Without risky expeditions, they would rarely find new resources and riches. They're also unafraid of death since in death their memories will be uploaded to the Votann so they can rejoin their ancestors. Thus, the greatest shame to the kin is to be denied the right to be uploaded to the Votann, and exile is the harshest form of punishment. Crimes like murder, extreme waste, or incredible failure are often the only things to warrant such a punishment. Expanding on this though, the kin uploading everyone to the Votann cores has become problematic since the generational amount of genomic data and memories is overloading the Votann's databanks in addition to the cores being far past their expiration date.
Wow.
Originally, uploading kin to the Votann was for practical reasons, recycling organic material and getting genetic data for future generations, but it has evolved into a sort of religious practice. This means that the Votann are at best slower to process information, or maybe a bit eccentric, and at worst, actually insane. The Votann have essentially become the kin's gods since they imparted valuable knowledge and are responsible for their reproduction. Kin called Grimnir, who are the League's psychers, speak with the ancestor cores when they need guidance or information. Unfortunately for them, though, the cores now take a lot longer to come up with responses, sometimes even taking centuries to respond.
Deep thought. I just realized they have deep thought.
Like, oh, sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The answer is 42.
Can you clarify? But even still, the Votann are the most important things in kin society, and they will go to any lengths to protect the cores. Otherwise, they risk extinction. Entire leagues have been known to completely sacrifice themselves to protect their cores. Cough, the original squats, cough. And this is one of the main tragedies of the Leagues of Votann. The cores were created for finite mining operations, after which the kin would return to the Imperium and get new stuff. But since the kin decided to settle in the galactic core, their protocol became tradition. They are now wholly reliant on the cores and the tenants' force for desperate survival obstacles that the leagues are likely far beyond now. So now they're limited to an inevitable doom by the
League of Votann's only real existential issue is that their cores are beginning to slow down and potentially fail. This is entirely preventable, doesn't have to matter most likely, but they can't do much about it because it would betray their entire culture. So they're pretty much ideology captured, I believe the current generation say. The audience captured, ideology captured. I'm old, please don't hurt me. Let me scream at the clouds.
Customs initially made for their survival. Basically, if they just learned to clean up their hard drives and stop being vol cells, they could probably wholly prevent their grimdark condition. But those things are literally core, pun intended, parts of who they are now. So they can't simply get laid or delete some files, as that would betray their whole culture and probably spell societal collapse. But finally, let's talk a bit on their tech and fighting style. They're very advanced, probably even more so than the Tau since they have Dark Age technology
that was a lot of...
the Mechanicus
would
literally kill for. Which,
I'll come back to that later.
Funnily enough, they can't act like dumb idiots when talking to Imperials, and especially Mechanicus, so they don't risk getting attacked for their tech. But anyways, the kin have incredibly advanced AI in the form of Ironkin, less advanced AI in their cog drones, better versions of Imperial weapons like their plasma and Autok bolters, and some other fun space guns like Magna Rail rifles and high-las rotary cannons.
That sounds awesome.
And these special weapons are only trusted to the most experienced kin so that they don't waste ammunition.
Conservative.
Which, speaking of, you'd think that for a thrifty race like the kin, they'd use more las weapons than the pretty over-the-top and wasteful bolter. But dwarves with big boom booms are cooler than all laser guns, so...
Well, every race gotta have a big boom boom.
Ironkin, Votann have the most advanced AI in the setting. The Ironkin are almost indistinguishable from Biokin other than the fact that they're robots.
Oh!
And, surprisingly for 40k, the Ironkin are treated as complete equals. They protect them, treat them as family, upload them to the Votann, and other stuff. And finally, for the fighting, they're kind of similar to fantasy dwarves, just with guns and Mars rovers. Except, of course, when they forgo guns and Mars rovers to be the coolest dudes ever. But yeah, their infantry is relatively slow, but are very hardy and strong, with great short, no pun intended, ranged firepower. Typically, the call will tap into the eyes of the ancestor to assess the enemy and quickly pick out key targets and kinks in the enemy defenses. Then deploy a huge charge of armored transports to drop infantry and dismantle the enemy. Oh, and they've also got little dwarf terminators with their elite Einhir Hearthguard.
Hearthguard.
But anyways, the Leagues of Votann are actually really fascinating in a way I didn't expect. They're probably the closest to a hard sci-fi faction in the setting. Outside of their dwarf wizards, they're a pretty grounded and plausible faction. They exist in the spirit of actual science fiction where authors ponder the effects of technology. The Leagues of Votann are a whole society centered around being shot into space to mine. There are a lot of interesting and plausible sci-fi ideas within the Votann, and the ways that their society evolved is believable with the conditions presented. I was honestly turned off to the faction due to their aesthetics and the fact that they kind of invalidated the Tau in many ways, and even other factions to a lesser extent. Although the look is kind of growing on me now, I still personally think they look a bit off in 40k. Alright. Originally here I had a little spiel about how I didn't like their aesthetic, blah blah blah. But being exposed to them so much this past week, I do see what they're going for and actually appreciate it a lot more than I used to. I still think a lot of units are too egg-shaped for my liking, and some just look plain weird, and not in the weird that I personally like. However, I do appreciate that the kin are a kind of divergent evolution to Space Marines and the Imperium in general with some Nordic and NASA motifs. I think most of my issues with them could have been solved if they just had more proper beards going around. I don't really care how impressive it would be. I think it would help with their egg silhouette, and it's just cool.
Egg silhouette.
I also would have really loved to see them lean way harder into the retro future ray gun look that the Dark Age of technology seems to have had, but...
By this, I mean that they clearly based the Votann aesthetic off of the retro future look UR025 had, which makes me believe that Doat had this general aesthetic. So I sort of wish they aired towards more that towards that more than the modernized look that ultimately went with. Oh, okay. I don't know what Doat is though. I'm sure somebody will explain what the Defense of the Agents. No, it's not Defense of the Agents. That's Dota. Dang it! Acronyms. I can't stand acronyms.
What they went with is okay. But that being said, after reading about them, I actually like the Votann a lot more than I thought I would. Yeah, who would have guessed reading a whole book about why a faction is cool would make me think that the faction's cool. And I'll definitely make more Leagues of Votann stuff since there's a lot I just couldn't cover due to time. I definitely want to talk about their units some more, but let me know what you think about the squads in the comments below.
Alright, so I did miss one that I wanted to read, and I had to pass that up until to the end. It says, this is one of my issues with the kin. Tau aren't really the tech race. They're only really notable because they fulfilled the young race niche now, along with their small quirks of OFC. I guess that's of course. The Tau have the most advanced tech other than the Leagues, Mechanicus, Necrons, Eldar, etc. They're still probably the fastest advancing race, at least. Okay. Because he was pointing out that they were being very advanced. And I have to say, that was pretty clever. That's pretty clever. They're kind of like according to KrakDuk, they came from the dark age of mankind, made their way to the core, and basically eventually they were genetically altered to the point that they were no longer resembling that of a human and ended up becoming space dwarves. It's one of those little things. The philosophical question, they say that our skin flakes out and peels off over time as we age, and they have that philosophical question of whether we are still the same person that we were years ago, physically, after layers and layers of skin fall off of us, flake off of us and everything. Are we still the same person we were before? That's one of those crazy existential kind of things. But it looks like that was the approach they did with the dwarves, to break them apart, break them away from humanity, and give them their own sense of identity and everything, which is a very fascinating approach to it. They made them so different. They made them so different that they don't even come off like humans. I was a little bit worried there because I thought they were going to be humans, and I was going to be ahead of the jumping the gun because I'm saving humans for last. But that's not what they did. They found a way to really evolve them into this loving, happy, mining dwarf-like family. And the fact that he pointed out that they're all egg-shaped is pretty hilarious. The egg people. The Eggmen. So, this is actually a pretty well thought out, well crafted race. I don't know, but as I had been told numerous times, all the races are supposed to be evil, no matter what. They're all evil. They're all a-holes. And I don't know if from the way KrakDuk is presenting them, they almost sound like they're good. They're just ideologically driven, like they're fervent. So I guess that would be the grim dark negative part of them. Like they don't have a problem going to a planet and go full Tyranid on the people. They they tell them ahead of time, we're coming in, we're taking your planet, get out. And everybody gets out, and they go in, and they completely and totally decimate the entire planet and start mining all the resources, just like the Tyranids. And then they go back to the core when they die, just like the Tyranids. These guys are basically the Tyranids. I know somebody in the comments gonna be like, no, well, actually, please do. This looks like another fun race, like the orcs and the Necrons, with a very interesting approach to the story. The lore masters, I gotta say, did a very good job, really fleshing them out the way they did, and made them very interesting characters. They're just nothing but clones. They're just clones, and that's it. They're clones of clones of clones of clones. They can't get laid. Well, they are apparently, according to KrakDuk, they are capable of getting laid and procreate. But again, their ideology drives them from not doing it and rely on Votann, the big giant head, also known as Deep Thought, who has imposed them the answer to life, the universe, and everything. They're all about the family, which is a very strange change of change of pace. I can understand people maybe not liking them either on the outset or overall, because they're it's supposed to be grimdark, and you're used to grimdark being like everybody's just full of hate, mad hate, lots of hate, and egotism. Just pure hate. But I like that they're not the I like the fact that the Votann do not look to travel all around the universe to take over, everything like the other races do. Saying they remind me of the orcs. You know what I'm saying? The orcs, they just want to have fights. That's all they care about, is having fights and having party, fighting and going to party time and everything with their fighting. You know what I'm saying? Then I'm sure they'll take a world if necessary, if they wanted to, but they're not motivated to take over a world compared to the other races. The Necrons want to get back their home worlds. Humans just want to take the world for themselves and so on. I still don't know where the Eldar and the Tower are at. We'll get to them over time. And of course, there's the Chaos Gods that I got to deal with. But with Votann, they just want to stay in their little pocket corner. They're like, okay, we got this pocket corner, and they're all that is ours. And would you please kindly stay away from us? Just stay away. I like that. I like that approach. It's a nice change of pace. You know what I'm saying? It's a nice change of pace from the other races that just want to conquer. The Votann just want to conquer their neighboring planets, within their own little pocket universe, and have a planet full of resources to mine for years to come, because one thing's for sure, they can't legitimately clean out a planet within a few days. It will take generations for them to mine out an entire planet whole, compared to the Tyranids. From what I understand, they can't really just wipe out an entire planet that easily the way they are. It's not like the Tyranids, where the Tyranids can multiply into the billions and the trillions, and they could just completely devour the planet, like the locusts that they are. The Votann has to go through a crazy process to get what they want. And Vin Diesel. The family meme. Yeah. This is they sound very fun. I'm not sure how much research is out there, like I said, because they're still new. But whatever research is out there, I would like to be able to try and get as much as I can. And then get the egg people out of the way. Get the egg people out of the way. For those of you who play the game, have any of you played against the Votann, Leagues of Votann, and how do they play like? Are they like the orcs? Do they? I mean, I know he explained a little bit about the game where they just, in a sense, where they just load up, in the vehicles and then they deploy and just basically, they're slow moving but they're compensated with lots of power behind their attacks and such. I'm very curious how they play in the game, because they sound pretty cool, you know. But overall, for a young race, a newly built race from Games Workshop, they really came out of the gate pretty good. They came out of the gate pretty fun. It looks like they took their time, developing them to get it right, to get it the way they want them to be, and made them really look like and they really presented them as a fun thing. From the way KrakDuk explains, not just only explained the whole race, but explained his feelings about them from the outset to how he changed his mind over time, and that's actually pretty good. If you could get a person who didn't like it on the outset, eventually liking it in the end. That's a good sign that you got a good product going there, and yeah, I want to see. I can't wait to see more of these guys. I want to see if they got like a key hero, or if they have a time period where things happen. Also a great way to introduce them, that they were in their own little pocket universe, isolated from everybody, but then, the other races began picking at them, like poking and reminded me of the Minbari. Again, look up the Minbari, or check out my research videos on the Minbari. You'll understand. That's what the Votann comes off ultimately, like that. You don't want to mess with one of the spacefaring, especially a group that can that goes into an area that's pretty crazy, chaotic, that could destroy you at every turn, and they managed to survive that. So yeah. Can't wait to continue on with the research with Votann. This is another fun group, and I'm excited for it. So head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible and Strange Fantasy Novel written by me. You'll find links to the book down in the description below, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible and did a lore video on my novel, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. And if you're interested, you can join me on my Love Multi stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do lore research, Japanese cultural studies, gaming, and more. I look forward to hanging out with you. So until the next round of Warhammer research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.